.NET 8 is finally here, and with its release came the very exciting announcement of .NET Aspire, an opinionated stack for building resilient, observable and configurable cloud-native applications with .NET. And what they really mean here is microservices. Local development of microservices or distributed systems is notoriously hard, and a main selling point of Aspire is that it will make developing and building these systems far easier. So what exactly is the problem Aspire is trying to solve? Distributed systems consist of many distinct applications, hence the term microservices. This can range from less than 10 services to behemoth systems made up of thousands of individual services. I'm looking at you, Netflix. As a developer on these systems, you'll need to run at least part of these systems locally or in some sort of development environment. Services that you won't need to debug and work on could most likely be containerized and run via Docker, but any others will need to be cloned and set up to run on your local development environment. This means you'll need to set up configuration for each service, like getting the location or IP address of each service and making that available to all its dependencies for HTTP calls. You'll need to configure stuff like connection strings to databases, not forgetting that you'll need to have these databases cloned or seeded and running locally too, and any other dependencies your system needs. Basically, anything available to your system in production will need to be available in development. In production, there will be an orchestrator or some sort of deployment script, but locally, you'll need to be your own orchestrator, manually starting every project and dependency, tedium at its finest. And that is where Aspire comes in. However, Aspire isn't Microsoft's first attempt at solving these developer woes. Back in May 2020, Microsoft introduced the mysteriously named Project Ti, an experimental developer tool that makes developing, testing, and deploying microservices and distributed applications easier. Sounds familiar, right? It streamlined the process of building, running, and orchestrating multiple services locally by providing a simple configuration model in a YAML file. A developer could configure this YAML file, referencing any projects or containers they needed to start without the need for those projects to be co-located. This included any dependencies like message brokers or database servers. Then the developer could start all the projects and dependencies with one command in the CLI. Project Ti also provided service discovery, and in case you don't know, service discovery is like a phone book for your applications. Apps can register themselves with it, and they can also request the location of the other registered apps. Project Ti also offered a way to deploy to Kubernetes by creating manifests for you. The project was very well received, but further development of the experiment didn't happen beyond some basic updates. Project Ti had gone dormant. Fast forward more than 3 years to the weeks preceding .NET Conf 2023, and VP Director of Product for .NET, Scott Hunter, gave several sessions that mentioned the re-emergence of Project Ti in an all-new guise, ready for public preview alongside the launch of .NET 8. He went on to say how the team had been inspired by the Spring framework and showed a redacted demo for the new, as yet unannounced tool, which we now know to be .NET Aspire. .NET Aspire aims to simplify the complexity of developing distributed systems, just like Project Ti. It offers service discovery, automated connectors for well-known platforms and services, and the all-important one-click start. The response to the announcement of .NET Aspire has been largely positive, but of course, met with some criticism. But more on that later. Now, I've only had a few days to go through .NET Aspire. Unlike other .NET products, .NET Aspire was developed privately. Only folks inside Microsoft were given access to the product and code, and Microsoft MVPs only being invited to a PGI, a product group interaction, to see the work in progress. I've played with it extensively and rummaged around the GitHub repository. Spoiler alert, I'm pretty smitten. Before I share my thoughts though, let me give you a quick demo. To get started developing with Aspire, you need to get the latest preview version of Visual Studio 2022, remembering to check the Aspire checkbox in the installer. If you're not on Windows or you don't wish to use Visual Studio, you can install the Aspire workload via the CLI and create projects that way. Back in Visual Studio, you'll get these two project template options, a .NET Aspire application and a .NET Aspire Starter application. Let's look at the second option, the Starter application. Once you go through the creation wizard, you'll be left with a solution and 4 projects. There's an API service and a web front end. Nothing new there, but then there are these 2 Aspire projects. These are the 2 projects we would have gotten if we'd chosen the first template option rather than the starter application template. If you watch the Aspire sessions at .NET Conf, you'll have seen this starter application running. So rather than repeat that, I've used Aspire to orchestrate a dad joke application of my own. This has a web API called Dad Joke API Service, which fetches the jokes from an external API, and another API project that fetches a joke from the first API service. Before we dive into the code and see what's going on, let's run the application and take a look. We need to run just the app host project. That will start everything else for us. That's the one-click start feature. And what we get is the Aspire dashboard. It's built using Blazor and the new Blazor Quick Grid component, which is a nice touch. At the top, we have all the projects Aspire has started. We can navigate to these directly. We can also edit and rebuild these projects without having to restart Aspire, which is a very nice feature. You can also see that I've asked Aspire to create 2 instances of the Dad Joke API. If I was orchestrating this manually, I would have had to have started 2 instances of the app on the command line, specifying 2 unique ports. Then we have any containers and executables Aspire has started. All the logs for every item running in Aspire are shown here in one place, which makes the development process so much more pleasant. I don't have to go down to the taskbar and try to divine which console window corresponds to which app. I can just select the app logs I wish to look at. Next up, we have the traces. If we take a closer look at the joke consumer, we can see all the requests that it's made and how long each stage took. This last one here is where we made the call to the external Dad Joke API service. Then lastly, we have the metrics. You can filter by time and then really dig into all the underlying processes your app is doing, from compiling to garbage collection. All of this comes by default with Aspire and is quite frankly amazing. With this dashboard, I think the team working on Aspire has really created something fantastic. They must be so proud. So that's what Aspire looks like running, but what is actually going on in the code? First, let's look at the app host, and in the program file, we can see this is where all the projects get wired up. There's a new host builder called distributed application. Then all the applications we want Aspire to start and manage are registered. We can easily specify how many instances of an app we want by calling the with replicas extension, like this. We can also tell Aspire which apps need to utilize the service discovery. That's done here on the add project line, and we can see that there's a reference to the Dad Joke API project in the Joke Consumer project. Next, in the Service Defaults project, there is an iHost application builder extension method that wraps all of the service registration for Aspire Service Discovery and the observability features in the dashboard called Add Service Defaults. There is a lot more that can be added here, but I don't want to get too deep into the weeds. If I now head over to the program file of the Joke Consumer project, we can see that the base address used to connect to the backend is just the name we specified back in the app host program file. You don't have to painstakingly wire up each app with the addresses of other apps. It's all done automatically. And you can and should have this address as a value in app settings. Whilst we're in this program file, let's see what else is related to Aspire. This line here is where we use the extension method I mentioned earlier, builder.addServiceDefaults. We also have this app map default endpoints, which relates to the management endpoints such as the health check endpoint. Let's go take a closer look at some of these defaults. In this extensions file, we can see that it's adding the service discovery. Then by default, it adds this standard resilience handler. This is so cool, as behind the scenes, this is adding some standard poly-resiliency policies to every HTTP client. You can also customize this with your own policies. If we scroll down further, we come to this Configure Open Telemetry segment. This relates to the rather awesome dashboard. It's nothing new. Projects like SteelToe have made adding management endpoints, distributed tracing, and metrics to systems fairly trivial for quite some time. But the difference here is that we get this dashboard out of the box with all the observability features ready to go. Another cool thing that comes with Aspire is standalone components. These are pitched as a curated suite of NuGet packages specifically selected to facilitate the integration of cloud-native applications with prominent services and platforms. These components are connectors that simplify the connection to these services. I'm a big fan of RabbitMQ, a message broker I started using about 8 years ago, so let's take a look at that component. We can install the NuGet package completely independently of anything else Aspire related, and then set up the connection with this line of code. This will make an instance of iConnection available via dependency injection. We can also add any non-default configuration via the app settings, such as using an async consumer, like I've done here. There are still a lot of other factors to consider, but that's another topic altogether. A big plus is that it automatically sets up the logging, metrics, and tracing configurations, which is very helpful. We can also use these components as part of an Aspire orchestration. We just need to add it to the program file in the app host project like this. This means that Aspire will manage the RabbitMQ Docker container for you. You don't need to go and start it yourself. Lastly, if you were thinking that Aspire can only run your .NET apps, think again. A nuance of distributed systems is that they're not often comprised of just one tech stack. I almost missed this sample application on GitHub. This particular sample demonstrates Aspire orchestrating a Node.js app. As a developer, Aspire offers you a way to extend its executable resource class and write your own custom resource builders. Once more connectors are created for Aspire from both the .NET team and third-party projects, and more samples are created showing developers all the ways in which Aspire can serve them, then I think we will really see the power of this ecosystem shine. Okay, so that's a look around at what's on offer, but what about some of the criticisms being leveled at Aspire? Well, a big limitation of Aspire right now is that all the projects need to be in one solution. This is a-okay if you're working on a monolith, and yes, I'd recommend using Aspire with your monoliths just to get all that sweet OpenTelemetry stuff and the dashboard. However, this is generally not how distributed systems are architected. Usually we have a service per repository with its own solution file, assuming it's even a .NET project at all. Aspire may encourage less experienced developers to create a monorepo with all services inside, effectively creating a distributed monolith, which you'll know if you've seen any of my talks on distributed architecture should be avoided at all costs. This is something that Project High handled much better, as it did not require all the projects to be in one solution. I do think that currently Aspire would work very well with a modular monolith utilizing the satellite pattern. Basically, a monolith with a limited number of supporting services, especially once Azure Functions is supported. But back to the multi-repo problem. There are several GitHub issues already on the Aspire GitHub repository asking how to tackle multiple repositories. So how should you do it? A few ideas have been bandied around, such as Git submodules or one Uber solution, to quote Microsoft engineer David Fowler, a key contributor to Aspire. I've had a play with a few different ways and settled on this. Each individual service repository will need to have its own Aspire Service Defaults project. This is because in distributed architecture, you want to have as few shared dependencies as possible, keeping services loosely coupled. As a related side note, a useful improvement to Aspire would be to have the Service Defaults project content scaffolded into an application in a similar way to ASP.NET Core identity. But for now, just add this project per repository. You'll then need to create a new solution with an Aspire app host project. This will be your Aspire Uber solution to run your applications locally. Add all the services, including all of their dependencies, to the Uber solution, which includes the Service Defaults project. If you have a lot of repositories with many dependent class libraries, this will be time consuming, but I hope the ease of use once done will merit the inconvenience. A cool upgrade to Aspire would be to somehow pull in solutions from other projects, effectively nested solutions, but I don't know if that's even possible. Next, each service executable will then need to be added to the Aspire orchestration. That means the app host needs a project reference for each executable, and those projects then need to be added to the app host program file, as we saw earlier. Once all that is done and any services such as Redis or database service have been configured in the app host, it should be a simple matter of starting the app and seeing everything magically start running and appear in the Aspire dashboard. Currently, I'm not sure if there's a way to get Aspire to start up any additional services, such as Console, on your behalf like Project Ty did. Let me know in the comments if I've missed that somewhere. Once you are able to spin up any container image you like via Aspire, you'll be able to run a lot of services that you don't need to debug as containers. This approach will leave your individual service architecture mostly untouched, while still getting the benefit of easier local development provided by Aspire. As to deploying Aspire orchestrated apps, currently Aspire can manifest a deployment manifest with only Azure Container Apps supported in the preview release. If you already have a deployment pipeline configured, this won't be of much use to you as yet, but you'll probably want to add in that nifty dashboard somehow. The observability endpoint should, however, be available via the exporter provided by Aspire. Martin Thwaites, Microsoft MVP and OpenTelemetry project contributor, has already created a prototype NuGet package for installing just the dashboard. It's early stages, but if you're interested, you could give him a hand with it. I'll put links in the description below. All in all, I feel that .NET Aspire is an exciting proposition. In its current form, it does promote some distributed systems architecture anti-patterns, try saying that 3 times quickly, such as coupling through shared project dependencies and mono repos. But we need to remember that this is a public preview. The team wants to hear our feedback so they can make the product better. I do think the team could bring in something akin to the YAML file that was in Project Ty to make the orchestration of multiple independent repositories that much easier, whether that's some kind of nested solution thing or something else. I personally cannot wait to see how Aspire develops over the coming months before it goes GA in February 2024. I'll even be including it in my upcoming workshops and conference talks. Check the video description for dates. In the meantime, I'd encourage you to download .NET 8 and give Aspire a go yourself. There is a growing samples repository on GitHub where you can see suggested design patterns for Aspire applications. Links to that and everything else mentioned are in the description below. I'll also include links to the demo code I created for this video. Also, don't forget to let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching. Bye!